Hey, Marty, it's so great to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah, and you're in Austin, Texas, right?
Yes, I am.
Good. I bet the weather's pretty nice down there at this time of year, right?
It's finally getting nice. I'm not good with winter. I'm not good with cold weather. And we're finally getting days where it hits 70 again. So I'm
Yay.
happier.
Right, right. You're on the upswing. Well, that's
Yes.
good. Well, what made you feel compelled to just like raise your hand and say, I want to be a part of a coaching session with Beth? Was there any like story or challenge or experience that you're going through that you want to kind of talk through as we go through this first guide sheet together?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I know we're going to get into this, but that fear for type 7, I feel has really come into my life a lot more recently. That fear of whether it's being trapped in emotional pain, physical pain, like that fear of pain has
Mm,
really been pretty present and pretty nagging, even
wow.
in situations where I'm like, I shouldn't be worrying about this. It tends to sneak in there, and I think it's always a good idea
Mm,
to get coaching and to learn more about that. And it's the sevens world of trying to keep things happy and pain free, but you can't always do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I wish we could. That would be
Mhm.
amazing. But someday we'll experience that, on the other side
Mhm.
with God. But yeah, so since we're here, yeah, we do bump up into lots of different struggles. And then there's times in life where, you can do the best you can to reframe and to be positive, but some things in life are just really hard. And so, yeah, I'd like to, explore that with you. Now, as you know, this is coaching, not counseling. So, just to kind of set the stage with that. So, counseling is taking a look back into whether it's your childhood or traumas that you've experienced and using a licensed professional and particular modalities to heal over time from those things. But coaching is different. Coaching is looking at something that you're stuck in or a place that you want to go, a goal you have, and that you want guidance from the moment you're in and moving forward. Now, that doesn't mean we can't look at some of the background story of something that's keeping you stuck right now, but there's just a difference between how we approach coaching and if someone needed counseling. So I know that you're aware of that, but I just kind of wanted to set that stage because I know a little bit of background of the thing that you particularly have been struggling with. And so I just wanted to kind of set that stage so that
Yeah.
we're all on the same page. So I hope that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So today we're going to go through our YEC's guide sheet number 1 for type 7. And there's 5 of them, but we're only going to have time to explore the first one today. But I think we're going to get a lot out of it. And my hope for you is to really use this time to start collecting the dots so you can connect the dots. Because the more you can connect the dots, you're going to have new neural pathways in your mind to go, oh, that's what's going on. And okay,
Mhm.
I don't have to believe those false messages or those inclinations. I can, head down a different path that's healthier for me or experience life in a new way that feels uncomfortable. So, but it can be really uncomfortable, right? Like all growth
Mhm.
is pretty hard and uncomfortable. And for type 7, that's not really fun. So I just want to validate that this can be a really uncomfortable experience for you as a type 7. And I want to be mindful of that. And I want to keep this in some sort of balance between us having a good time talking and
Mhm.
exploring together, but also vulnerability and realness. And so
Mhm.
if at any time you're feeling like, I just want to hightail it out of here, just let me know, and we can
Mhm.
always take a pause on the intensity of maybe said situation in the moment, and but so that we can keep you fully engaged, right? And so don't hesitate to kind of give me a heads up on that.
Yeah, I
Um,
appreciate that.
yeah, good. Okay. So I'm going to put the guide sheet up here on the screen, and um, I think I asked you earlier if you wanted to read the things on the guide sheet, or do you want me to read? And you said for me, so that's great. I'm totally happy to do that. So what I would love is that I'm going to read a portion at a time. And if you actually, can we just pause real quick? Can you maybe, I think I'm hearing the mic on your hair.
Oh, let's see.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's good. I
Okay.
can kind of hear it. So I'm thinking, I wonder if that will come through on the other end. Okay. Okay, Nate, you can come back here. He's the one that edits this.
Okay.
So I'm going to read this first, the portion. And what I'm hoping for you to do is to listen as I'm reading, and then any thoughts that come to mind, aha moments, questions, maybe you're like, oh my gosh, that connects with this story when I was in middle school. The more you can talk about whatever is happening inside you in the moment, like your thoughts and feelings and inclinations, the more it's going to connect to new neural pathways so that you can actually go there more quickly, more often in the future. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're seeing here on this guide sheet, the first thing we're seeing is just that, you're the entertaining optimist, the enthusiast, the adventurer, as some will say. And there's 5 words here that I want to just see which ones really stand out to you the most and why. So you're playful, excitable, versatile, but you can also be scattered at times and an escapist. So what really stood out there?
Mm-hmm. I would say excitable. Excitable is probably the one that I feel like if I'm into something, it is full on excitement. And I look for ways to try to make things more exciting if possible.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like cleaning the dishes, like trying to make it a game or trying to play a song and trying to make everything a little bit more exciting than it may actually be.
Yeah.
Escapist is probably the word that does resonate the most on that other side.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, even when I think about physical pain, I'm like, how quickly can I get through this? How quickly can I make this stop? Even if it's as simple as a stuffy nose, I am like, how do we get out of this? How do we fix this? There has to be a way. There has to be a remedy. It's 2024. We shouldn't have stuffy noses anymore. Like, we should have a cure. And yeah, so I think escapist is the one that really sticks out to me.
Yeah. Oh, that totally makes sense. And I think we'll dive in now into the core motivations, because I'd love to ask questions that kind of go along with excitable and escapist. But I think when we unpack the core motivations, we can connect the dots here as well. So the core motivations are the driving force behind why you think, feel, and behave. So every Enneagram type has core motivations. And when you understand what is really going on internally, a lot of things are going to start to make sense, and you can start to put basically pieces of the puzzle together, and then hopefully reorient your heart into a healthier trajectory. So for the type 7, you have a core fear, the thing that you're trying to prevent from happening. Your core fear is to be deprived, trapped in emotional pain, limited, bored, and definitely missing out on something fun. Does this seem true for you?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah. And then the core desire, this is like, oh my goodness, if I had this thing, life would be full and rich and I'll be satisfied. And for the type 7, it is, well, I desire being happy, satisfied, and fully content. Mm-hmm. Now, the core weakness of the 7, this is your Achilles heel, the thorn in your side, the thing that keeps tripping you up all the time. Yours is gluttony. Now, gluttony for a lot of people, is, oh, it's food. Well, of course, 7s usually typically love a variety of foods and they're excited to try lots of things. But gluttony here means that you feel that you have a great emptiness and you have an insatiable desire to fill up this emptiness with fun things and experiences and stimulation in hopes that you can finally feel satisfied and content inside. And I like to describe this for people that are 7s as that there's this big painter's bucket inside, but there's holes at the bottom that the seven's not fully aware of. And they're like, I've got to fill this bucket. And oh, there's a fun thing. And they kind of grab experiences and stimulations and they put it in their bucket, but then it leaks out at the bottom. And they look down, they're like, wait, where did that all go? Oh, no problem. And so they reframe in their mind, like, no problem. I'll just go to the next fun thing and the next fun thing. And it's really kind of like almost like a starving kid who is seeing lots of cotton candy and eating the cotton candy as if it's going to fully nourish them and benefit them. But as we know, it's not. And so for the seven, that insatiable desire to fill themselves up with experiences, stimulation, positivity keeps going on until they fully recognize it and fill that void with something actually that is more satisfying than the things of this world. And we can get into that in a little bit. But their core longing of the seven, this is the message your heart longs to hear and experience, is to hear you will be taken care of. Now, as you hear any of these, which ones, if not all, really stand out to you? And maybe you can even thread all four through one particular experience, like, oh my gosh, they all fit in this one thing.
Yeah.
But what stood out to you the most and why?
Yeah, definitely being trapped in emotional pain. I think that to me, it's honestly, it always surprises me that this isn't everyone's fear. Like, to me, that is the lowest point you can be in, is being in some sort of grief or loss or pain in a way that you can't really reframe or you can't do something about.
Right.
And I think it hits hard because and this is probably one of those false messages, but if you are in emotional pain as a seven, it's really hard for me to believe that you're not going to be able to shake it. Like, it's always going to be there. It's always going to, like, you're always going to have that feeling. And it's hard to believe that you can have that feeling and have positive emotions. It feels like it's only going to be the bad. And if you're experiencing it, there's no back door to it. And then you won't like your life anymore. And I know that's not true, but that's where my fear automatically goes to.
It almost sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I almost have this picture of quicksand.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once you get in it, like, there's no getting out. And like, the harder you might try to make things positive, it's only going to like suck you down into this despair more. Does that feel true?
Yeah. And it's also that fear of, if I'm in emotional pain, the things that used to make me happy, like, won't. And I can't, and you just feel like you're going to be stuck. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Which is also missing out on fun or satisfaction or joy. It doesn't have to be necessarily fun.
Mm-hmm.
It could be just the joy of life. And like, you won't be able to have that. Right.
Right. Like, if you're not happy, then what's the point? It's like, then where do you go from there? Like, if you can't access being happy, then it's all doom and gloom, and that's not a good place to be. So yeah.
Is there a particular area of your life where a lot of these kind of like, you're like, oh yeah, this all kind of resonates with this one thing that I feel stuck in?
I'm trying to think. I know I kind of sent this story in, but I feel like as I get older, I struggle so much more with the realization that I am going to have to face hard things. And I feel like, and I know this might be the seven talking, but I feel like I've had a really great life. So I'm like, oh, everything's great. Everything's fine. Nothing's been that bad. And that's not true. There's things that have been hard for sure. But I'm like, the older you get, the more likely things are going to be difficult, or you're going to lose people, or you're going to feel different levels of pain. And I know over the summer, my husband and I were in a pretty nasty car wreck. And at the time, it was really scary. And I've always been a pretty anxious driver. I don't know what it is about being in a car that makes me feel trapped. Like, something about it is very like, if there are people too close to us, if there's like anyone coming in my lane, I'm on high alert, and I'm like, I feel trapped immediately. But this one was a really nasty car wreck, and we were fine. Nothing bad. Like, we were okay, not injured. No one else was injured. So in my mind, it was like, okay, this really isn't that big of a deal
Yeah.
because we were okay. The car wasn't, but we were okay. But then it trickles into life outside of that, where I have a ton of anxiety, like worse in the car, but then also just the fear of, you know, losing people, or even not
Mm.
having the car, being limited, not being able to go places made me really
Right.
upset.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
it was funny in the moment. Like, the wreck happened and I was like, okay, we're all right. And then I asked my husband, he was driving, I was like, is the car still drivable? And he was like, no, the car is not drivable. And
Yeah.
that's when I lost it. I was like, oh no, there goes my like ability to get from point A to point B. And we
Yeah.
couldn't leave the situation. I think that was the other part that was tough, because we couldn't just go and people were coming
Yeah.
up to us and it was a whole thing. And I had no escape route. You have to just
Mhm.
be there. So
Right, yeah,
that's,
like, who wants to be there, right? Like, that is scary,
yeah.
it's hard, it's yeah. Wow. Well, I'm so glad that you guys are okay. Um, and I can see definitely how your core fear and desire really played, a big role in that. Um, here you were I mean, and you were trapped in, like, as you said, I don't know why, as a 7, I've always felt trapped inside the car, and I'd love to just take a minute or 2 to explore that. What do you think about being in the car feels that you're trapped?
Yeah, like, even if I'm driving or if someone else is driving, like, I know we can always pull over, but it's more the fact that I don't have control over what other people are doing. Like, I can't control what they're gonna do or come into our lane. And I think this wreck made
Yes.
me very aware of the fact that, yeah, you don't people can just come over. They can just do whatever. And it sounds very bleak, but you're very aware. It's like death's all around you at that
Yeah,
point.
well, I think this is and that's exactly where I was going in my mind, but I just kinda wanted to see, where, because I mean, just because I'm thinking that doesn't mean you're thinking it.
Mhm.
So, so as I'm kind of imagining you in a car, I can really hear the 6th part of your heart
Mhm.
being like, I can think of all the worst case scenarios because I can't control the people outside me. I
Mhm.
can definitely, if I'm the one driving, I can control how I'm driving,
Mhm.
but there's no guarantee about how everyone else is driving.
Right.
And then especially if your husband's driving and it's not you driving, again, there's lack of control, and the lack of control, I would think, is just like, again, you're being deprived or you're trapped in a
Mhm.
situation that you don't have the ability to maneuver quickly.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would love to kind of think through with that intact, how how do you think the core message or the core longing you will be taken care of? Where would you love to see that to come to fruition? Like, let's say in the car, like, how would you love to know you will be taken care of? Because sevens in general are like, hey, no one's fully given me satisfaction in life. I've got to do it by myself. I'm fine. I've got it. But in reality, like you said, in real life, we're not fully satisfied. And it would be so amazing if someone could say, "I'll take care of you. I've got
Mhm.
you," and they really mean it, like, they really can do it,
Yeah.
and that ultimately is God. Um, but what would that feel like to actually experience that feeling that I will take care of you in the car?
Ooh, I'd feel a lot less stressed. I'd feel really relieved and like, okay, everything's gonna be all right. Like, no one's gonna touch us. We're gonna get where we're going, and
Yeah.
nothing's gonna impede that. And I could relax a little bit. I wouldn't have to be on like high alert of what's gonna happen, and how do we get out of it if we're in something stressful. But I would feel a lot of relief to
Yeah.
feel that. And I think even you just saying, like, if someone just said to me, you're going to be okay, you're going to be taken care of, like, we're going to be okay, it's like, okay, you're right, you're right. I can get out of my own head of listening to, you know.
Yes, and I think that is the first path of the 7 is like, "Okay, good. I can, like, stop thinking about worst case
Mhm.
scenarios. I can just move on." But that's actually not reality,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So there is something to be said about, let's say, the 6th part of your heart that's trying to bring reality to the forefront. Like, hey, there can be accidents. Didn't you see, like, this summer it happened?
Mhm.
So let's protect ourselves. So the 6 definitely is chiming in, and it's there to protect you.
Mhm.
Now, it might be doing it in a way that's over exaggerating, um, but we also have to honor that part of your heart and say and validate it. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, it totally makes sense why you have concern.
Mhm.
And even if we do know that God takes care of us, He provides for us, but that doesn't necessarily mean bad things won't ever happen. We just know
Mhm.
that eternally we are fully safe in His care.
Mhm.
And so there's the kind of the already, but not yet. Okay. So the already is I am safe in the care of God. I am His beloved, and He will ultimately protect me, and He's near to me, and He embraces me. So there is that wonderful sense. And at the same time, I think it's good for a type 7 to also embrace the reality that we never really do know what could happen. And that will also, in some sense, if you are able to be honest and real with that part of your heart and welcome it instead of, because I'm sure as a
Mhm.
7, it's like, be quiet, get away. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to hear you anymore.
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
guess what? Like, what do we do when we don't feel heard by someone?
Get louder.
We get louder.
Yeah.
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 So I would just be curious if you were to take some time, like a day, like it could be an hour, it could be 5 minutes, whatever feels comfortable, and just explore and kind of welcome that part, like write down the things that that part is
Mhm.
saying and just really look at it and welcome it without shame,
Mhm.
condemnation, trying to control it, and just see what it says. And then let it know that as the adult, mature Marty, that
Mhm.
you will take care of it to the best of your
Mhm.
ability and
Mm.
see what happens with that space. Now, I do want to say just totally upfront, like going through a car wreck, there is a lot of trauma involved. So
Mhm.
definitely whether, you do or want to, of course, I'm always going to recommend that people get some counseling just to kind of walk through that path in with a healing or a licensed professional. But at the same time, as a coaching path, I
Mhm.
think there are things that we can do that helps us to not negate a part of our
Mhm.
heart that's trying to say, "Hey, hello,
Mhm.
I've been trying to warn you certain things." And
Yeah.
so what does that feel like to allow that part of your heart just to be so authentic and real and just listen? It doesn't mean you have to that it's
Mhm.
true, that you once you start letting them talk about it, that it's gonna be that way forever. In fact, usually when someone does listen to us completely and fully, what usually happens?
We feel a lot better. We
Yeah, we feel a lot
feel
better.
yeah.
We kinda just stop talking about it as much,
Yeah.
we feel like a sense of relief, and so what does that feel like to maybe have some time to just let that part of your heart to unpack its fears?
Yeah. That's definitely a challenge. I think the part that you mentioned about not fully believing it, because I think that stress part or that the wrong messages can be so convincing that you just buy into it and think, oh, this is what's going to happen. I can't handle this. I'm not going to be okay.
Yeah.
But how you said kind of separating it, like just listening to it and
Mhm.
stopping there. I think that's where I can do a better job is stopping in my tracks and kind of acknowledging those feelings, but not
Mm.
always assigning truth to them.
Right.
That's tricky. That's very, very tricky
Yeah.
because
Right.
it's hard to question what you feel, I guess, because it's valid, but it's not always like that's not always what's going to happen. Like you can't go too big. Like I think as that, I don't know, I could be very exaggerated with fear and think, oh gosh, this is gonna happen again. Like it's coming and I'm not gonna be able to handle it. But acknowledging that yes, you're gonna have that fear, but
Mhm.
pausing, I think pausing is huge
Yeah.
for sure.
Right. Yeah, especially for a 7 to pause. And in our book, More Than Your Number, we talk about these internal parts with
Mhm.
Enneagram internal profile. And so What I would suggest is getting a piece of paper out and allow the healthy part of yourself, like the part that shows up for everyone else as you guide people and encourage
Mhm.
people. The things that you and this is the healthy side, not the everything's going to be great,
Mhm.
not but the part that's like, hey, I I know really important things. I know a growth path. So write things at the top of there like um, I will take care of you. And
Mm.
so this is talking to that less healthy or vulnerable part. I will take care of you. It will be okay. Anything that older part of you that is mature and feels belonged to, let that be at the top of the page. And that way, as the other part kind of unloads what it's feeling, the truth of the leader of your heart can be right in the forefront of your mind.
Mm.
So that way you don't just kind of spiral down and it just feels like you're just going to be swept away. Does that feel
Yeah.
safer?
Yeah. I'm like tearing up a little because just like telling, like your mature self telling you, like, I got you. I'm going to take care of you. It's going to, like, you'll be taken care of. It'll be okay. Like, kind of seeing yourself in that way is,
Mhm.
it's like, oh, I can do that. I can.
Yeah.
It's possible. And
It's like think
yeah.
about your younger self, like your
Mhm.
little younger self.
Mhm.
And like just look at little Marty
Mhm.
and at some point just say, I totally get
Mhm.
why you're scared. Like it makes total sense feeling trapped and here's all the things. But I also know that we will go through hard things, but we've done some really great things in getting through them, and we've got friends and we've got family and we've got the Lord that helps us to get through. So does that feel, yeah, no, you let
Yes.
it all out. Like just you. Be you. What's coming to mind for you right now?
I'm gonna try to speak
You don't have to
clearly.
keep it together. You can be you.
I think you just listing out like, oh yeah, you have things to get you through hard stuff. Like
Yeah.
you have an arsenal of people of who can be there for you, and like reminding yourself that it's not just you alone
Mhm.
handling difficult things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes with the internal one of the false messages of the 7 is or really the wounded childhood message is that don't depend on anyone for anything. And so basically your more mature, older part of your heart is saying to this younger, vulnerable part has always heard that message internally is like, I totally get why you hear that message and you think no one can come through for you, only you can. And now you're afraid that you don't even have control over of life and that's valid and understanding, but we do have a path. There are ways to get through. And yeah, some things are going to be really, really hard, but we've always endured. And if anything, the 7, like that one of the words at the top is versatile, right?
Yeah.
And so just always keeping in mind that you're not just one part. You're not going to be just the scared, vulnerable part. You have this part of your heart, Marty, who's an adult and beloved and feels versatile and has a great arsenal to help that younger part. But I think the key is to allow that part to feel welcomed, attuned to, and cared for, so they can say what they need to say, while also not, you know, slipping into their pattern and way of thinking. So there's a difference between listening and attuning than believing and going down that rabbit hole with them. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think that is something that I have definitely struggled with in the past is getting into, especially if I do take some alone time, sometimes that can be really tricky because I can start to really have that's where the negative thoughts come up and that's where the spiral happens. And then it's just not a great cycle. But
Yeah.
like you said, acknowledging it and kind of patting it a little and
Mhm.
then going from there is that's something I know I need to practice more because I will push things away and push the negative out until it gets too loud and then it's hard to ignore. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
yeah.
and that's what you're experiencing right now is
Mhm.
that part of you is like, "You're not listening. I'm gonna be
Yeah.
louder." And, you know, and so and that's okay. That's just what that part does because they're afraid and they don't feel heard and attuned to. And so they're just doing what's natural for them. And it's not shame. You don't have to condemn yourself. You don't have to feel bad about it. It's just is what it is. But we can change how we attune ourselves to the inner parts of ourselves. And again, like that's probably I mean, there's, as you know, we have lots of parts. So we have our wings and we have our Enneagram paths, and then obviously our main type. So I think it's a combination right now of your main type and the sixth part of your heart that's thinking of all worst case scenarios. And that's okay, in that you can attune to that part. Well, let's go on because I know this is going to kind of like, weave into some of the other parts of the guide sheet. So I'm going to read the first 3 paragraphs and then I'll read, well, actually, I'll read the first 4 paragraphs and then I'll read the last paragraph. And keep in mind kind of like what we've been talking about, the struggle that you have, and just all the things that we've talked up to this point, and then see what can unfold from this information. Okay. You radiate positivity and happiness, but internally, you are always longing for more and fearful of missing out. To you, life is like cotton candy, super sweet to taste, but it disappears quickly, leaving you unsatisfied and wanting more. When life is hard, you experience a deep internal struggle in your attempt to avoid all pain at all cost. When life gets complicated, painful, sad, and boring, you quickly escape to things that please you, allowing you to avoid the painful feelings that you fear. The cost to yourself as you pursue your need for adventure, happiness, and stimulating experiences is the inability to enjoy the present and feel satisfied with what you already have. You may keep yourself extremely busy to avoid dealing with internal anxieties, sorrow, and boredom. Putting painful things out of your awareness or reframing suffering into something positive without truly dealing with it always shows up into counterproductive ways throughout your life. You can struggle in relationships becoming scattered, uncommitted, and unreliable. People close to you may get frustrated when you feel that you value new experiences and things more than them. Your tendencies can hinder emotional depth, which often involves walking through challenging emotions and pain together. So, what stood out the most in that section for you and why?
Okay, there were a few. Let me go back. Let's see.
Sure.
Putting painful things out of your awareness.
Mm,
I will do almost anything to avoid hearing something sad, like watching something sad. If there is a thought that pops into my head, like
mhm.
it is all arms go of trying to get that out. Like even today I was frustrated because I had music on shuffle and I was doing something and it was a really sad song and I couldn't change it. I had to listen to it. I couldn't do it. And
Right.
I was so upset that I was like, I've got to get this song off. It needs to be blocked. Like I know that's a really simple example, but
That was a great example. Yeah. I
but
mean,
it
that's the beauty of the Enneagram because it goes back to those core motivations, and even as simple as that song, you
Mhm.
can become aware of like, "Oh, well, that's why I put this song off,"
Yeah.
and then deal with it in a more, I guess, thoughtful manner in the sense of like, "Okay, I have, tools, I have things I can use, and yeah, you know what, I don't like feeling this, with this song," and sometimes it's kind of fun just to laugh about it.
Yeah.
But that's a great example, even if it's the smallest example, um, it highlights the importance of understanding what's going on, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And let me see that other part of that, reframing suffering into something positive without truly dealing with it always shows up in counterproductive ways. It's kind of
Mm,
going back to what we were saying with if you don't acknowledge it, or if you try to put it away really fast or move on, it's going to come out in other ways or seep out in different situations. And that's tricky because I sometimes just don't even realize that I've pushed it away until,
Right.
it comes out later. And yeah, it just magnifies emotions more, I
Yeah.
think, when it is seeping out. And then I'm like, why is this thing making me so sad? And it's almost like that's kind of why that song makes me so sad, because I'm not
Mm.
dealing with, the heavier
Yeah,
things.
you
And then
know?
I hear a song and it's like, why am I crying this hard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, I talk a lot about the Enneagram being a rumble strip on the highway, that thing that alerts you when you're starting to veer off course and
Mhm.
crash into, like, the field or something off, the highway. So it sounds like when even like we said, even the littlest things, that the sad song comes up and you just wanna turn it off, but you can't because you can't get to whatever device it is to switch it. But then you start feeling sad or crying, that alone could be a rumble strip, a warning of like, "Why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
Oh, you know, there's something I might not be dealing with." And it doesn't mean you have to deal with it right now in the moment.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said about acknowledging how you've been designed and wired. So as a 7, naturally jumping to the next fun thing and
Mhm.
reframing, that you realize that in order to really navigate your heart in places that are hard, you really have to set yourself up for success in that. And that's kind of what I was saying, like writing those things on that piece of paper, like
Mhm.
reminding yourself of the adult part of your heart, the mature part of your heart, writing down those things are true so that as you
Mhm.
unpack things, you've set yourself up to be able to actually go into those hard
Mhm.
places um, with more resilience. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. I think you just saying, writing down the things that are true, that really resonates with me, because
Mhm.
if I don't have like something to hold on to, I won't have the resilience. It's if you
Right.
don't address things, you almost don't have the stamina for when things do get hard or get complicated. And yeah, writing down things that are true, that I need to do that more consistently. And it
Yeah,
doesn't and it sounds crazy because it's like, yeah, I know what's true, like, but then I'm like, but do I really? Am I really being honest with myself on?
I think and that's where I love the language of parts, because
Mhm,
a part of you totally believes it's true. It
mhm,
lives the truth. But there's a part of you that doesn't believe it's true, hopes that it's true. I mean, there's
mhm.
lots of different things that are
Yeah.
happening within you, and that's where it's good to just accept that it's okay that there's different parts that have feelings or viewpoints, and when I say okay, it's not like it's okay, like, let them run amok, we're not
Mhm,
it's the opposite. It's like, yeah, we can welcome it and acknowledge it and not shame it, but we also wanna guide it and lead it into what is actually truth.
mhm.
And so that helps us to not be as scared of these parts of us, just like we just want people to hear us out, and not to be afraid of us when we're having
Mhm.
a down day. And so that's kind of the approach to take. So
Yeah.
was there anything else in those 3 paragraphs that really stood out to you?
Let's see. Your tendencies can hinder emotional depth. That
Mhm.
that makes me kinda sad because I try really hard to have a lot of emotional depth for other people,
Mhm.
and I know when I don't allow myself that, it's I'm not doing myself a service on being able to, give that to other people. And I think that's one of my biggest frustrations is when I am perceived as surface level or not deep. And yeah, and it goes back to like you have to deal with even just some of like the slightly negative emotions that aren't like encompassing, like the ones that are pretty easy to shrug off, like taking the time to acknowledge those. That way you can continue to build that emotional depth.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one really sticks out to me, and it hasn't in a long time. I will say, when I first read Seven, it is like, okay, whatever. But
Yeah.
now it's like, no, I really want to be able to have that with people, and
Yeah.
that means you have to have it with yourself, and
Well, and
that
I
is a
think,
challenge.
you know, I hope that with our time here and you being vulnerable and even crying,
Mhm.
that there are going to be some people, not all the people, but there's going to be some people that you can go there, that you
Mhm.
can dip your like toes in the water of sadness, but knowing that the people around you have got you, that
Mhm.
that they're going to allow you to be really open and transparent while also making sure you don't just dive, headlong into it
Yeah.
and never come back out. And I
Yeah.
think if you know that you're going to be with that kind of person, then it will be more easy to go there with
Mhm.
them because sevens are really deep. I mean, you just
Mhm.
showed it,
Mhm.
but they don't always demonstrate it to other people because there's a lot of fear,
Yeah.
like, what if I never come back from this? Or what if people
Mhm.
keep sucking me down into the rabbit hole of
Mhm.
sadness and despair? And so that makes total sense. But I think as you find those safe people in your life, I think the connection and the vulnerability will come as well.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the last paragraph is on a more hopeful, upful swing. However, when your heart aligns with the gospel, you become more grounded in the present moment and you're able to savor what is actually before you and with a grateful heart. So, trusting that God will fulfill your internal longings, you become more receptive and thoughtful. And when you combine all of this with your natural creativity and energy, you'll inspire others as you walk through both the highs and the lows in life. So, paint a picture for me of when this is true for you.
Ooh, let's see. I think it kind of goes back to recentering myself on really understanding what is true. Because when I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, I can get through things or I have my people, when I am a little bit more aware of what's really happening, um, then I can be a little less scattered and all over the place. Um, and that's when I can kind of be more in that center of creativity and energy,
Yeah.
and being more grateful for what I do have. I think I can lose sight of that a little bit,
Hmm.
or obsess over it too much, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I love, like, this sounds silly, but like I love my cat so much, and he's really old, and I'm now like
Oh,
worried I'm gonna lose him,
yeah.
and and my husband said to me, he's like, you've got to enjoy the time you do have, and that's like, that's sad, but it's so true. Like
Yeah.
you've got to enjoy what you do have.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And it's
Yeah.
it's hard. It's a hard lesson for me to remember, but when I am in that place, I'm a lot lighter, a lot more just in tune and happier.
Mhm. Yeah. That's really, really insightful. And yeah, that is going to be really hard when you don't have him. But man, the sweet moments that you can have now that will carry with you are going to also be joyful in in the future too. So I loved how you kind of connected those dots with this. Um, okay, so on the back side, we're going to talk about Enneagram paths. So this is the two numbers you're connected to on the Enneagram symbol. So for the 7, that's type 1 and type 5. And if people are looking at this on YouTube, you'll see it clearly. If not, I'll try to explain that there are 4 boxes here with the Enneagram symbols in each of them. And the first box is the stress path. And this is when a type 7 moves to the average, the unhealthy parts of type 1. Like you don't become a 1, but you can take on some of the attributes of a 1. And what that will look like is the type 7 can impose restrictions and limitations on yourself to be more productive. So, like, you get really kind of on yourself, kind of critical. You can also notice and point out imperfections, wanting yourself and others to live up to higher standards or ideals. And then they'll get upset with and become critical of others when they're preventing fun from happening or
Mhm.
experiencing fun from happening. Um, a great example of this, I always love this example. It was in The Office when it was Michael Scott's birthday, but it would also happen to fall on the same day that Kevin was going to hear from the doctor if he had skin cancer or not. So everyone was focusing on Kevin and the potential of skin cancer and totally ignoring Michael's birthday. And I mean, you could see that one coming out getting really kind of critical and,
Mhm.
just all the things. That's such a great example of how the one can show up, because a lot of times people are like, ones, because or sevens can be like ones. It's like, yeah, they really can. But a lot of it
Yeah.
goes back to the sevens core motivations. When those are being prevented or happening, they can move to that one space. So where in your life has that one showed up?
I have a very, very similar example to that, like similar to The Office, where it's not that gloom, but not that bleak of someone getting cancer results. It was maybe my I want to say like 16th birthday, and my birthday falls near Thanksgiving, so our whole family is together. And
Hmm.
I remember being so frustrated because we were at a place where there were a lot of wineries, and being 16, there's not much to do at a winery.
Right.
And I was so angry because I was like, it's my birthday and you're taking me
Right.
to places that I can't do anything at except maybe eat some crackers and maybe eat some cheese. And I was so
So sad.
bored. I was so bored. And I was a brat all day because I was like, why are we doing this on my birthday? And kept trying to like bargain my way to get things like, can we go to this shopping center? Can we go to this place? Like, can we do this once we leave this winery? Like, trying to somehow sneak in my way. And it turned out by the end of the day, we didn't have time for those things. And I was very prickly. I was
I
very
would
much in my one.
That's so funny. I brought up that same example. I had no idea. That's so hilarious.
I
But
know.
that is sad. I mean, your sweet 16th birthday and you're totally
Yes,
bored.
but we had plans for my birthday another day. I feel like we did. Like,
I
we had
know, but
things,
yeah,
but it
that's
was the
hard
day.
because as the 7th, like, well, I can experience fun on my birthday and the other day too.
Yes.
We can
Yes.
do multiple days. Um, oh, that's so great. Thanks for that example. Okay, so the next box is the blind spot path, and this is the 7 moving to the average, the unhealthy parts of type 5. And this typically only shows up with your family, maybe a close friend. So the people that you kind of let your hair down are really the only ones that typically see these qualities come out.
Mhm.
And so for you as a 7, you're going to grow tired of being positive and energetic. You might conserve your energy by withdrawing and seeking seclusion to recharge. And you can experience darker, cynical, and more pessimistic viewpoints. So the 7, usually when they're with other people, they're pretty energetic and fun and positive and keep, everyone connected together and thinking of the next fun thing to do. Um, but obviously that's exhausting, right? And
Mhm.
so when they're with their family, they might fully retreat, need time alone. They might not be that same bubbly, positive person. And family members can be like, you're a 7? No, you're not a 7, but they'll see you as a 7 out there with everyone else, but not at home. My dad is a 7, and this was very true in our family. So, is this true? And if so, paint us a story of how this happens for you.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of I have a specific example of one with my husband, so I'll come back to
Yeah.
that. But I know as a kid, at school and whatever I was doing, I was very lively, very energetic, always chatting, doing, moving. And at home, I would definitely be way more like, I'm just going to sit in my room and do what I want to do. And I don't have to be happy right now. I don't have to show any of those, like, I don't have to be entertaining. So I'm just going to withdraw to my room. And I'm an only child. So it's very easy to do that.
Yeah.
And even with like family events, I can see myself being more of an observer and kind of just going along with what they want to do, or just kind of just I don't want to say like turning it off, but just being like, all
Yeah.
right, I can just coast through
Hmm.
this.
Yeah.
But the part about experiencing darker, cynical, more pessimistic viewpoints, I definitely do that with my husband. He's the one that gets to hear the dark worries that go through my head, or like, even recently I'm like, we don't know how much longer I'm going to have with this cat, and he's healthy. Keep that in mind. He is healthy. He's not
Yeah.
sick or anything. And I'm worrying about like, I know I'm not going to have like years and years and years with him. And he's like, why does your mind just go to this like completely doom and gloom place? And I'm like, well, you're the only one that's hearing this. It's literally just him. I'm not telling anyone else how just worried I am about our completely healthy cat. But yeah, so he gets to hear every dark thought because I do feel incredibly safe with him.
Yeah, and it's a positive, and there's always, negative aspects. So it's not that you being open and vulnerable is a bad thing. It's again, it's more, well, here, I'll give it to you in this way. So the blind spot path is the same direction we want to go in growth. So you want to move towards the 5, but the healthy parts of 5 in growth. But growth is always hard. So instead of doing the hard work, sometimes we take the easier route out. And so instead of going inward and maybe journaling and being in the present moment and, all the things that would be good for a healthy 7 to enjoy, you're kind of going the easier route by like, I'm just going to be, I'm just going to tell you my darker inner thoughts and feelings, kind of hopefully I can get that out and like move on. But so let's move into the next box, which is the growth path. And this is the 7 moving to the healthy parts of 5. What that will look like is that you're going to allow your quick mind to rest, finding more clarity and insight. You're going to place more value on wisdom and discipline by becoming more grounded and focused. And you're going to focus on your inner world and learn to accept all of life, the good, the bad, the happy, and the sad. So there's one part where maybe the blind spot part is where you're just going on and on about the cat and you're not open to grounding yourself and being more sober-minded and self-regulated. You're just kind of allowing your thoughts to go wherever and getting really dark. But the healthy part of 5 is the observer, to observe that your cat is 13. Even though he's healthy, he's still 13. And that there's richness in life today and that he's still healthy. But there's also sorrow that in the near future, whatever that is, he'll be gone. And I love the picture of this box. I always use this picture of Inside Out, the movie. So Joy, of course, the quintessential 7, is trying to get rid of sadness the entire movie. But at the very end, she has the epiphany, the aha moment that it's in collaboration with sadness and all of the emotions that the richness of life is experienced, and that she can actually feel the fullness of life in a new way. But it does include sadness and sorrow and pain and all the things. And so that's where this space comes from. Does that give you a great picture of it?
It does. It does. And I'm always trying to kick sadness to the curb. I can handle anger a little bit more, but sadness is the one that, And it's really hard to remember that it's like 2 sides of one coin, that you have to have the sad to understand how happy something makes you. And that's hard. It's hard to sit with both just because you really just want only the happy, but you do have to have the sadness to have the good.
And have you ever seen the movie Shadowlands? It's about C.S. Lewis. Such a good movie. But anyway, towards the end, and I'm going to spoil it for people that haven't seen it, sorry. But he does marry a woman, and she ends up having cancer. And they got married so that she could basically live in England. But then they grew to love each other. And then she got cancer, and they were out and about in the fields and stuff. And then it started raining, so they went into the barn. And she said, can we talk about this? Like, what's coming? And he said, why are you ruining this special moment together? Like, we're here together now. And she's like, part of the pain now, or part of the pain in the future, is the joy now. Like, so we want to embrace the joy in its fullness, knowing full well that the more we enjoy life, especially with others, it will and can lead to pain later. But also we can carry that joy with us. And so It's like, same with your cat or, whatever your fears are. We need to hold on to it more intentionally and fully while still knowing that that in itself can lead and will lead to pain in the future. But why not experience the fullness of it all right now? Does that make sense?
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that one hurts my feelings. It does. That one is hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to hold both those things of like enjoy what's happening now, even though
Yeah.
sadness will come, pain will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where leaning into the healthy parts of 5 and
Mhm.
1 is gonna be really beneficial. So the next box is the converging path, and the converging path is when not only are you more of a healthy 7, but you've also
Mm.
incorporated that healthy, 5 in you that we just talked about, but now you're also moving into the healthy 1 part, and this is really hard to kinda get to, but it's so beautiful when it happens. And for a 7, you're gonna learn to accept life as it is and live for a higher purpose. You're going to focus on top priorities and complete them with accuracy and on time without avoiding them or procrastinating. And you're going to take ownership of your responsibilities, even if they are not fun. And
Mm.
I think I would also add to that in the context of what we're talking about is being able to fully acknowledge the reality of life,
Mm.
but still being a 7. So it's like
Yeah.
you're not only acknowledging the fullness and the reality of life, but you're also bringing the abundance of life, the joy, and God wants us to have abundance and joy. And so I definitely don't want 7s to hear, "Oh, you should just, sit in sorrow." No, that's not what we're saying. We need your joyfulness. We need the
Yeah.
abundance that you offer yourself and the world. I mean, it's crucial. But you're not gonna feel the richness of life if you negate all of the negatives, and the pain that kinda comes with life, and it goes back to that analogy with joy and Inside Out
Mhm.
at the end of that story. So seeing the converging path, what comes to mind for you there?
I really love the line about learn to accept life as it is and live for a higher purpose. I think that's beautiful. I'm definitely still on that path of trying to figure out how to do that better, for sure.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
accepting life as it is can be tough. I feel like I can halfway accept things, but learning to fully accept that if things aren't going my way or I may not be like doing whatever I really want to be doing as fast as I want or getting things as fast as I want, like learning to appreciate the journey
mhm.
and kind of reminding myself to appreciate the journey because we just want to get where we want to go and that's not really where the learning comes, it's the process.
Yeah.
So that line, I really like that, and I think it's something to continue to remind myself to do.
Yeah, so my picture, my vision for you is this healthy 7 that radiates joy, but is also bringing in the 5 where she can go inward and experience those emotions, um, and observe life,
Mhm.
as it is, and then the 1 living for that higher purpose. And that person, the beloved child, that's the beloved child part of your heart, the more mature leader of your heart, that's the one that can listen to the wounded part of your heart that's throwing a temper tantrum that things aren't fun or you don't wanna be here, in this moment because it's
Yeah.
sad or, but that's where this part, the beloved part of your heart can listen and attune to that part of your
Mm.
heart and just let them express themselves, and then not reframe just to get into the positive, but give them what's actually true. Um,
Yeah.
and that will allow that part of your heart to be able to be in the hard moments. Not that it's going to be fun, but they're going to be able to be in those hard moments with, I guess, less intensity of trying to escape or to get out or rethink or disconnect from the situation completely when you need to actually be there. So that would just be my hope for you is that you will cultivate that self-leadership
Mhm.
and so that you can experience more of the fullness of life, in ways that are really joyful.
Yeah.
And joyful doesn't always mean happy, it can
Yeah.
kind of be a range of emotions as well.
Yeah. I think, gosh, this really is so helpful. Just hearing, like, learning to attune to your emotions. I think sometimes, like, I know what they are. Like, I think I can label them, but I don't know if I can necessarily regulate them and look at them for what they are and what
Well,
they're not. And I think,
and that's okay, and you
yeah,
gotta kind of welcome that and accept it because
yeah,
honestly, as a type 7, these muscles have atrophied because you haven't used them.
yeah.
And someone that has atrophied muscles and they're trying to learn how to walk again, you don't
Hmm.
just, "Oh my gosh, really? Like, you're
Yeah.
terrible." It's like, no, it's like cheer yourself on when you take a step and, like,
Hmm.
when you build those muscles, like, encourage yourself along the way.
Hmm.
There's things that your muscles are super strong in. That is you connecting with people, being positive, having fun, having purpose in life that gets everyone moving in a direction, like, you've got those muscles. These are muscles that are weaker, and that's
Hmm.
okay, and so if you can accept just the reality of it, not shame it, then you'll see that
Hmm.
you can encourage yourself to keep building those, even if it's a little bit at a time. It doesn't have to be like you have to figure it all out right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
this is a journey and a process that we need to go through.
Hmm.
Okay, the
Absolutely.
last part of and we've already gone through some of these questions, but the last part is the internal message, and this is like a record player in your mind, a false message that constantly is in the background, and it feels so true. And yours is, "When I get what my heart wants and desires, then I'm okay." Does that feel absolutely true to you?
Yeah, that is for sure true.
It's like, yes, it is true, right?
Right.
And of course, I always chime in with all my
Mhm.
clients, "Okay, but as a 9, my message is if everyone else is good and okay, only then can I be good and okay." Well, no one's ever good and okay, so therefore all 9s can never be good and okay.
Mhm.
So you can see the falseness of it when you
Yeah.
see the 9s, um, even though we think it sounds so true,
Mhm.
uh but you can kinda see the absurdity of it, and it's not that I mean, yeah, of course, if you got what your heart wanted, you're gonna feel elated and excited and all that stuff, but you're okay even if you don't, and that's where the self-leadership comes in.
Mm.
And these questions here are really just to kind of knock the record player that's in the same groove, saying the same thing over and over. It's just to knock it out of that groove and hopefully back into the truth message. So these questions I have here are like, well, how do you distinguish a need from a want? And is it hard for you to do that? So a lot of 7s, everything they want, they think is a need, like, no, but
Oh,
I
yeah.
need that excitement. I need that adventure.
Yeah.
Um, and then can you be okay if a particular want is not being met? And then 7's like, well, no. Well, really? You can't be okay? So
Mhm.
these are the questions that you want to kind of push and prod and help yourself to develop those muscles where typically you haven't exercised before. So kind of push against this message, especially when you are operating through that message. You may not necessarily realize you're thinking it, but this is a rumble strip. So when you're like, I have to get what I want or I have to be happy. Really? Do I have to? Or like, is there something I can see right now and savor right now? So does this help you? And do you hear this message often?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Even if it's like, "Oh, if I can just not feel that pain, I'll be okay. If I can just not be scared or not worry or not, have that negative emotion, then my life will be great. Like, if I
Mhm.
don't ever have difficulty, then life will be great."
Yeah.
And that's just, it sounds so true, but it's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, that distinguishing between a need and a want, I think that really
Mhm.
does tie back for me, especially when we're identifying what feelings are true or what's really true in that moment. Cause that's
Yeah.
where I think I can really focus on, okay, I don't have to be okay right now. I don't have to get through this as fast as possible. I don't have to stop crying as fast as possible.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
to give it the time it needs.
Yeah. Yeah. And that will feel awkward and weird at first,
Mhm.
but as you do it more and more, it will never be like, "Oh, I could totally do that. That's easy because 'cause you're still gonna always be a 7. It's not like you're
Yeah.
not gonna be a 7. but you'll experience the other side, which is so beautiful, but so hard, right?
Yeah.
And so I just encourage you to continue to write down what the leader part of your heart, the beloved part of your heart, would say in moments that aren't in the situation at hand.
Mhm.
And so that way you can coach yourself
Mm.
back into what's true. Um, and I think that would be really helpful, especially in those moments like you were experiencing with the potential of death or
Mhm.
being trapped in sorrow and grief and pain, and that it will never end. So acknowledge those, attune to those, let those be heard. But I would first, as the seven, set yourself up for success and to write down what is really true from the leadership part of your heart, so that it feels propped up to be able to hear the hard things that can really kind of knock your feet from under you if you're not ready for it, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Well,
Absolutely.
has this been helpful?
Yeah, it's been very helpful, and I always try to pay attention to timing in my life because I think God's timing really does mean something. I think He
Yeah.
always tries to teach us things through timing, and I've had kind of an emotional week, so this has been really nice to actually have at this time and talk through these
Mm,
things at this time.
I'm
So
so
it's
glad.
been
Well,
helpful.
thank you so much for being just you and vulnerable and transparent and even crying, because I know it's not fun, but just really showing up in this coaching session. And my prayer, my hope is that you'll be able to walk away from this and really take, a step. It's not all the steps, but a step, and to really savor what you have
Mhm.
and to then lead the parts of your heart in ways that encompasses all of life
Mhm.
while also feeling the joy of life as well.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks, Marty, for being with me today.
Yes, absolutely. It was great.